Jake gets his first comm badge. Odo spins into a dreidel, and Chief was almost a cellist. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
What's up, guys?
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 16 of Deep Space Nine called Shadowplay, directed by Robert Scheerer. How's it going, Cirroc? All is well?
Yeah, it's going good. You know, one of these days I'm going to try to guess what you're going to say on your opening. I think I might have gotten the comm badge one right. I definitely would have got the dreidel one because I wrote that in my notes. That
no way.
Turned into a dreidel. That's what I thought of too,
That's so cool. Did you draw a picture?
I did draw it's a supplemental picture, but yeah, it's there somewhere. There's my dreidel spinning on the floor. And that's Dax's hairpiece that she was wearing.
Wow, I didn't even notice the hairpiece. Good eye.
Yeah, she had a nice, kind of a bronze, silver-looking. The reason I noticed it is because it actually looked like the wormhole itself. So she was wearing, she was wearing this hairpiece right there, and I don't recall the hairpiece being that visible to me. That like a clamp or a clasp. So when I saw it, I was like, "Oh wow!" So they were wearing hairpieces on the bridge, and it was nice to see the way hers was stylized, with a center kind of bluish gem in the middle, stone in the middle, and then a kind of a silverish, almost bronzish, oval shape around it, kind of looking like a wormhole. So I made note of it. Just a little quick note.
A lot of people in our group, the Seventh Rule Facebook group, have begun trying to guess what the trivioids are going to be at the very beginning that we say here. I think that's been headed by our buddy Dr. Anne Marie Siegel, but she's getting pretty good. She'll make some guesses, and she'll get pretty close sometimes. But those of you at home, feel free to join in the game. Try to guess what the three trivioids are going to be at the beginning of the show. I'll try not to look at them so it doesn't influence. It doesn't make us do it or not do it based on what you guys say. But
no, I really enjoy it because I feel like there are a lot of takeaways from any particular episode. And you do a good job of highlighting things that either go unnoticed or that stick in the back of your mind, or the things that are the things that you would want to talk about. So I thought it was really good.
You make a good point, too. A couple things. One is that there are a million takeaways in every episode. That's what makes it so fun, is that Star Trek is always so rich with details that you could pick out 100 different trivioids and never run out. So that's one great thing about Star Trek. And then the other thing is that, Star Trek nerds, we love trivia. We love little things. We love, do you know how many episodes a Ferengi is in Next Generation? And right now somebody's like 7. I don't know if that's true. Or, or do you know, oh, here's a piece of trivia that was interesting. When we first saw that little girl on the planet, Taya.
Taya, yeah.
Yeah, Taya. I immediately recognized her voice. And Star Trek fans may have also recognized it. I was immediately like, hey, that's the girl that was in an episode of Next Generation. I was sure of it. When you hear her voice, she has a very distinguishable voice. And I remember her going, Isabella, all the time in this Next Generation episode. So I checked her out on IMDb, and she was, in fact, what was it called? Imaginary Friends. She played a character in Imaginary Friends. Where
do you have this actress's name?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. It was like Susan or Sarah. Let me.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I actually made note of it myself. The performance that she gave in this episode, I thought was fantastic for somebody of her age. She delivered a really great performance. She held her own in the scene with Renee Odo. And I thought, he's a fantastic actor, and she brought different dynamics to his performance that softened him up and made him seem a lot more human and somebody with feelings. So I thought the two of them and their scenes together were outstanding.
I totally agree with that. Her name is Noli Thornton. Noli Thornton. And yeah, I agree with that. Like, it seemed like, they kind of both benefited from each other. I mean, she probably benefited from him a little bit more, but it was a good dynamic, and she held her own as a young actress. Good for her.
Absolutely.
I think this may have been after her Next Generation episode. I think she was a little bit older and a little bit better. But I also noticed that too. Good actress.
Yeah, she gave a great performance. She gave the camera her full face. Her eyes were really full figured and just like really deep. And she made you like her and care for her. And in that short time that we got to know her, she was a very likable character.
Here's something interesting. I just looked her up on IMDb. It looks like, and I'm not sure if this is the character I'm thinking of, she was in Beverly Hills 90210 for 10 episodes. Her character was Erica McKay. And I'm thinking, wasn't there a point where Dylan McKay had like a little adopted sister or daughter or something like that? That must have been her. So she's a 90210 and Star Trek. Woof. That's big fan base.
Yeah, she's got it. But definitely talented young actress in this particular episode. So I enjoyed their performance, and I enjoyed Renee Auberjonois, Mr. Auberjonois, the late great.
Absolutely,
just gives us more of his, his character Odo, and he's so good at being awkward when he needs to be, and yet interested and intrigued when he also needs to be. So they gives us a very delicate balance of the rough, grumpy guy who doesn't want to get involved, but also the guy who really wants to know the answers to these questions, right? So I like that.
He also opened himself up to just a tiny bit of vulnerability. Like, he let himself soften up a little bit for that child character.
I think so. And that's what doing scenes with children can do. And that's one of the dynamics that, Aron Eisenberg used to talk about, seeing Jake and his dad together in scenes, because it brought out a different side of Sisko, Commander Sisko, and made him softer. It made him, we get to see his fatherly kind of instincts. And I think the same is true here with this scene with Odo. He really takes a liking to this girl. She wears on his defense mechanisms of this, impenetrable wall of, I don't feel any feelings. And she starts to chip away at it, and in a very innocent way, and I think that's what was so endearing about her is, she even tried to play the trick about turning him into the breadcrumb, which is, he's like, you think I'm going to fall for that?
And then he softened up there. He's like, why? So you can eat me?
Exactly.
And we all knew that at the end he was going to change into something. Like, when he was saying goodbye to the little girl, we're like, just change into something, Odo. Come on, just change. And then he starts to walk away. We're like, Odo. Oh, and he goes, okay, I'll spin around and like Brian Boitano over here.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was cool, the little spinning thing. I didn't know what he was going to turn into. I was hoping it wouldn't be a breadcrumb, because that'd be really hard for visuals. Where'd he go?
The bird got him.
No.
Bye, Odo.
There goes Odo. But no, I thought that was a cleverly written episode. There were so many little things, though, to go over. Of course, Jake was in this episode. We had O'Brien in here. So there's a lot to go over. Kira had a very large B story with Quark and the Vedic. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of elements they kind of touched on.
Mm-hmm. Also, very quickly before we get too deep into that good stuff, you did mention Aaron, and that brings up a fun thing: is we're counting the NAMs, the non-appearance mentions, and Nog gets a non-appearance mention in this episode. I don't know, you heard that, right?
Yeah, I did hear it. That was the scene with Jake and his dad when he was asking him to get a job.
That's right. He was like, I want to work with Quark, or I want to work at Quark's with Nog. How great would that have been if Nog is like, he's like, my dad expects you to do this, but don't worry. Uncle Quark won't notice if we steal a little bit off the top or whatever.
We would start our own business inside of his business. That wouldn't end well.
Right. But that would be fun.
But it would have been fun, actually. The idea danced in my head when we were seeing that.
Mm-hmm. So kudos to Nog for getting another non-appearance mention. I believe that makes our unofficial total at Jake has 3, Nog has 3, Molly has 2, Keiko with 4, and Rom with 2.
I thought he was at 3 before. That doesn't put him at 4 now?
Nog?
Yeah.
I thought this was...
I think he was at 3 before.
He was at 2 as far as I knew, but...
Okay, all right. Well, he certainly gets a lot of mentions, and I like those, the category of non-appearance mentions, which is like...
Me too.
It's like... It's a great thing.
People should get those because, like, you figure, like, you didn't get paid for that day. You didn't get a credit for that day. The least we should do is acknowledge that you were still part of the story. You know, you should get something, right?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It reminds me of Discovery when we were watching that character, the engineer, the lady that played the engineer, and she was so good. And then she just disappeared for
Jet Reno?
Jet Reno, yeah. And you would see her in a scene and you'd be like, oh, I love her. She just killed it. And then she wouldn't be around for 2 or 3 episodes.
Right. And
there would be no mention of her, right? So you kind of at least if you're not going to see somebody, you want to hear the non-appearance mention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Keeps them alive in the story, right?
Absolutely. I think that kind of stuff is great. And then it gives us, it lets us go in our head canon, what the fans call head canon, which is what we believe is canon. That, you know, we're kind of following along what Jake and Nog are doing, even if they're not specifically seen in that episode. If they're mentioned, we know what's going on. You know, Nog is working for Quark. You know, he's talking with Jake. Jake's going, oh, maybe I'll go work with you. You know, let me ask my dad. You know, it's kind of like it gives us more Star Trek lore to work with, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting here at this point because with this particular episode, one of the big things that are relevant about and define both Jake and Nog. Jake is one of the attributes to his character is that he was never in Starfleet and he didn't join Starfleet.
Right.
And so he's known as the guy who took an alternate route.
Right.
And Nog, on the other hand, is also known as the exact opposite, which is he's the guy that did join Starfleet.
Yeah. When he wasn't supposed to.
When he wasn't supposed to, out of tradition and culture. So here we are. This is the point at which our paths are exactly going to intersect and cross into opposite ways, right?
Yeah, you become the anti-establishment outsider as far as Star Trek is concerned, and he starts to be the outsider that works his way in.
Exactly. And I don't think there's any mention of his interest in Starfleet up to this point. So right now he's just working at Quark's bar. He's
going to
school and also scheming up different ways to make money on the side by trading things or whatever we do.
Or
right?
spraying fart spray on aliens.
getting beat up. Yeah. So right now he's not Starfleet material, nor has he showed the inclination to want to join, right?
Right.
And so I think this is a really interesting crossroads as far as where the arcs of the stories and the characters intersect and start to take on each other's characteristics. So I like that. I like the scene with Sisko and Jake having this conversation because we all, as kids, have had conversations like this with our parents, right? It might be a bad report card or something, a letter that you have to bring home that you don't want to have that conversation with your parents.
I've had those conversations.
Right. And you're like, oh, God, I don't know how to do it. And we all have to have that one moment where we sit down and say things that are difficult, that we think are difficult. Sometimes they turn out to be not difficult at all, as is the case in Jake and his dad. Mm-hmm. But the anxiety, the build up to it is difficult. You know, it's like breaking up with somebody in a relationship. It's like the idea of breaking up with them beforehand causes so much stress that it's actually sometimes more stressful than the actual conversation of the moment that it happens. So
That's a good point. Made me automatically think if we had any major breakups in Star Trek. I can't think of any major ones, you know.
yeah, no, I tell you what, the one breakup that we did see in this episode was Quark and Kira, and how she broke up his dreams.
She broke his heart. First she broke his heart, and then she broke up his plan.
Yeah. So that was a big break. But no, I don't remember any big breaks relationship wise on the show.
I guess Worf and Ezri kind of, you know. I mean, whatever. We don't have to get too deep into that. That's for another episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was I liked it. There was a lot of good stuff. And talking about Kira, you know, she did kind of rip his heart out and then step on it and then shoot a hoop with it, you know.
Well, again, she delivers to me, which is a wonderful, strong performance, and one of the archetype characters for a strong female on television. I think one of the best we've ever seen in some cases, amongst the best. There's the opening scene in which she interacts with Quark, and she comes directly to him and says, you know, I'm not letting you get away with everything, essentially, right? And he says, you don't like me? Something to that effect.
She's like, and she seemed disgusted by the question.
Oh, God. And her answer was just so tough and right on point. I think I'm going to paraphrase, but it was, don't like you. You collaborated with the Kardashians. You cheat your customers. I don't just not like you. I despise you.
Right. That was the exact quote. Yeah.
And I love the way she just slapped him in the face with that. I think she's one of the best at just shutting things down, right? She shuts things down like, no, if you don't get your hand off my leg, it's going to be a problem. That'll be the last time you touch something. Just like the real shutdown lines. And as far as a fierce, strong female character, she is it.
Yeah, and you know, Quark is the kind of guy that would be like, "Ooh, what a woman!" when she walks away. You know, and like same thing with Zach. You'd be like, "I really like her." Friend Nick.
Yeah, but yes, that is true. You can never go too low for Ferengi.
They love it.
They never get the message. They think it's the opposite of what you're trying to convey. But yeah, then we also got the Jake O'Brien, kind of like, you know.
Right. This was one of those episodes, kind of like what we got, was it last week, where people kind of paired off. So we got to just kind of focus on relationships, on how, you know, duos would work together. There was Jadzia and Odo, and then we also got Jake and Ben, you know, his dad, and then we also got Jake and Chief, which was a good one. We also had Kira and Bareil and Kira and Quark. It was a lot of really good stuff. But what were you saying about Jake and Chief? That was a good mix right there.
Yeah, it was a good mix, and you got to see the apprenticeship of Jake with O'Brien. There was a time when he said, "I'm talking to Mr. Sisko." I think he referred to me as Mr. Sisko, and my dad says, "Mr. Sisko." All right, and that's when he hands me the comm badge. I like that scene. You know, it was such a friendly reminder of the times that we had together. It also reminded me of that particular outfit, which I think this is the first time I'm showcasing in this episode.
I noticed the outfit too. I was like, wow, that is the most loose-fitting outfit they've hooked you up with so far. You must have been like, wow, this is great. I can breathe. I can move around a little bit for a minute.
Yeah, actually, I wrote that down. I was like, wow, finally, one of my favorite outfits that started to break the mold of, you know, starting to evolve and change instead of just the one thing. But yeah, I wrote that down, the tan and brown zip up.
Mm-hmm. And your first comm badge.
And my first comm badge. So, you know, it was, it reminds me of, you know, these photos that we always have when we go to the conventions and you see old pictures of yourself.
Yeah.
But to see it come out of the episode directly is one thing separate than seeing it as a still image. So it's a really honor to be able to have that captured. I wanted to bring up some other things too. You know, you have a picture in the background of the race of people that we encountered. I guess they're humans.
The
right?
human chefs with the just human guys with robes and chef hats.
Yeah, I wrote that
out
down.
in the gamma quadrant.
Yeah, I wrote that down because at first I was like, what is that from? I was trying to think. It reminded me of so many different things, but the Ethiopian priests in the highlands, in the mountains, most of them wear outfits exactly like that with the necklaces and everything. So I thought of the priests.
Interesting. I'm sure everybody was thinking of Ethiopian priests in the highlands.
Oh, everybody.
So obvious.
But it made me think of it,
Interesting. And, that's a good point.
The robed guys, the hat is similar, almost exactly. The beads, usually the beaded necklaces are rosaries. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a nice little throwback for me. And what do you think about this episode? Like the overall of it?
I thought that it was not one of their better ones. I thought, like with all of Star Trek, if the story isn't super exciting or stupendous, you can still entertain yourself by noticing the little things that they put in there, whether it's, the relationship between two interesting characters, or whether it's cool quotes or notable things like rules of acquisition, or it, like, for example, in this episode, another mention of the Dominion. We got another mention of the Dominion. He said, I was very happy on whatever Prime, on Yadura Prime. I was
right?
On Yadura Prime until the Dominion took over. And so there's another mention, like third or fourth mention of this Dominion that are there. We know they're the big players. We know they take stuff over. We know that nobody can stop them and people get totally wiped out. So that, they're really planting these seeds. So even in this episode, which has nothing to do with the bigger scale of things, we still get one tiny little nugget in there. They keep planting those seeds,
Yeah, and the other nuggets that I liked out of this episode was the backstory both on Odo and O'Brien. They both kind of went into their childhood. So Odo talks about, when the kids teased him and asked him to shapeshift, and they didn't really.
Right.
And he gives a whole backstory. We get to see like a little bit of what it was like for him growing up as a shapeshifter, right?
Right. And he's a tiny bit insecure about shapeshifting. He doesn't want to do it because he feels like a pet or a circus animal, or like a monkey, do this, do that. Yeah.
Exactly. And then O'Brien goes into his story about his childhood and his dad wanting him to be a musician. And so,
cellist.
Yeah. So even if we don't really get the greatest story of all time, we still get the backstory. We still get these little nuggets to help, fill out the frame for me as far as, getting a better understanding of what Gilligan character was.
Exactly. And that's what Star Trek does so well is, not every episode can be a world beater. Not every episode can be, destroying the Dominion like you got to have like lower episodes that kind of fill in the edges. But even in those episodes, they give us these little gold nuggets of interesting facts or backstory or information that'll be useful a little later, a little foreshadowing. Tell you what, we've got to take our break real quick. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll throw out the factoids that didn't make the cutting room floor. And one thing that was kind of weird to me too, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll be right back with the seventh rule.